Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Motivate Point Podcast. Today is the first episode of 2026, so thank you very much everyone for listening in. And I hope everyone out there had a fantastic Christmas and New Year as well. Today, guys, we are going through the top 5 philosophies for 2026 that it's going to help you with your money and finances. These are all 5 philosophies that I would say for the most part, I absolutely do live by. There are some... in some cases, some things to think about and hopefully can also help improve your life and money and finances as well. All right, so let's get stuck into it. These philosophies are philosophies that I believe will stand the test of time, all right? But even today, as I reflect on last year, the year before, and really for today in 2026, these philosophies absolutely do stand still as relevant as they ever have, all right? Hopefully today, these can help you in some way, shape or form, but let's get stuck into philosophy number 1. Your mindset is your best weapon for success. By far, the best weapon that you have for success. Now, mindset, your attitude determines your altitude. There's a bunch of kind of quotes and things like that we've sort of heard over the years. But even still today in 2026, I believe that your mindset is by far the best weapon you have for success. Now, I want to give you guys some examples, right? And some evidence to my claim here. Now, for most people, I would imagine, over the last 10 years, most people can probably recognize that society, particularly in the West, is kind of folding in on itself, right? There's a lot of problems that we've got socially. I remember pre-COVID, having the idea 15 years ago of, let's just say, transgenderism, it wasn't even a thing. And today it's obviously not only a thing, but it's been pushed in our faces, sort of nonstop for the last sort of 10 years. Now, fundamentally, this is one example of a bad mindset, right? Now, what I mean when I say that, most of, unfortunately, the left-wing politics, right? And this is more so talking to the left side of the spectrum. When we think about the woke, that sort of element of society, fundamentally, these people are championing victimhood. That's the reality. That's what they're doing, right? They're saying, hey, we've got these people, these marginalized people in society who don't have a voice. We need to champion them, celebrate them, and essentially elevate them, in society so that, that they feel power in X, Y, and Z. Now, really what they're doing is championing people who are victims, right? And it's championing victimhood. Unfortunately, when you champion victimhood, or when you reward victimhood, let's say, you're incentivizing victimhood. So you're incentivizing more and more people at scale. When we talk about millions of people around the globe, millions of people are going to buy into, hey, if I can get free social credit by changing my gender or saying this is my pronoun, or it doesn't have to be about gender, it could be literally about anything. Like, you're always giving your power away to other people, but you're always standing in a place called poor me, everyone else is at fault, it's everyone else's problem. Now, the reality is, guys, if you live that way, you can. No one's going to stop you. You're probably not going to achieve much, all right? Because you're constantly living in this state, this perpetual state of it's everyone else's fault. Like I'm at the effect of everybody else in the world. If you want to succeed, you need to be at the cause of everything. You need to be at the cause of every matter, not at the effect of everything, all right? Now, your mindset is really the weapon that allows you to do that, all right? It allows you to see where whether it's negative habits, whether it's what I call your bullshit, all your trauma, all the little things that you've sort of told yourself throughout your childhood and teenage years that help you become the person you are. You can either be a victim of that, or you can take ownership of your emotions and take ownership of your life and actually start succeeding. Now, there is a reason why mindset was the very first podcast that we ever recorded here. And there is also a reason why this is also the first philosophy for 2026. Your mindset is by far your biggest weapon when it comes to success. Now, there is a quote that we do have for our clients, particularly early on in the piece when we meet them. Wealth is 80% mindset, 20% mechanics. Now, what I'm talking about really is the Pareto principle, like the 80-20 principle, right? So 80% of your results comes from 20% of your actions, or, even for us, like 80% of the revenue that we earn as a business comes from 20% of our clients. Like, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle applies to every area of your life in multiple different ways. But the reality is, even still today, wealth today is 80% mindset, 20% mechanics. The overwhelming majority of your success and your wealth is mindset. Now, when I say mindset, let me give you guys some real tangible things to think about here. All right. So what a strong mindset is, what a wealth creating mindset is a mindset of ownership, not victimhood. It's a mindset of seeing opportunities and not being skeptical about everything. A strong mindset could be things like, for example, controlling your emotions and not having them control you, having patience, being able to delay gratification. These are all some really good examples that if you can focus on, hone in on, and get really, really good at, you are literally 80% of the way to becoming successful and a multimillionaire. All right? I can just about guarantee that. Now, at the same time, the remaining 20% of mechanics, that's literally what we do for clients. But notice how and I did a review the other day, right? So over the last 5 years, we've had around 13,000 people come to us, right? And that's like, knock on our door and say, hey, call me and talk to me and see if you can help me. Literally, out of those 13,000 people, there's only a tiny fraction of that have actually gone and done something. Now, just notice, if wealth really truly is 80% mindset, 20% mechanics, and as a business, our entire thing that we do is facilitate all the mechanics for our clients, it's probably fair to say that the most part as to why most people haven't actually done anything is because of mindset, not mechanics. That's what we do. So again, it just goes to show with some evidence that mindset is so critical for your success. It's not even funny. All right. Now, when it comes to your mindset, the other thing that we really need to get a grasp on is the fact that you always have control of that, whether you think you do or not. Your mindset is always inside your control. The second that you believe it's not is the second that you've just become a victim of your own emotions. You've become a victim of your biology. You become a victim of your environment. Everyone else is at fault and you're not. You live that way, guys. None of this is going to work. All right? The power of your mindset is knowing day to day, every single day when you wake up, every single day when you go to sleep, every action you take, every decision you make is 100% in your control and fundamentally your life a result of your choices. But if you have a poor mindset, you're going to make some pretty poor choices. If you have a rock solid, strong mindset, you will become unstoppable. I can almost promise that. Cool. So philosophy number 1, your mindset is still your biggest weapon for success. Philosophy number 2. So number 2, the amount of money that you make is directly associated with the value that you provide society. All right. So I want to give you guys some examples of this. Firstly, none of us are given, we don't start at the same point, right? There are people who are born into families who are billionaires. There are people who are born in, sub-Saharan Africa and they live in a village where there's zero energy and zero resources. The reality is those two people, one who grows up in the middle of Africa, one who grows up in a billionaire family, they're starting off at completely different points, all right? Life is not fair. All right, we just got to get used to that. Life is never fair. It will never be fair. There's no such thing as being fair. When we talk about things like equality, right? We always want equality, and equality does not exist. There's no such thing as equality. My wife, she is 47 kilos, right? I'm about almost 90 kilos. Literally, the amount of food that I require is almost double than the food that what my wife requires. Like when it comes to ordering food, like the meals, the physical food that we eat I eat way more food. I physically have to eat more food than her in order to sustain my biology than what she does. That's not fair. And if we get caught up in this game of, life's, we need to be equal and equalize everything and everyone gets their fair, we're playing a losing game here because nothing is fair. Now, at the same time, when people enter the workforce and, you sacrifice time at uni, you go and get a really good high paying job, you sacrifice the same time at uni and you get a really poor paying job, there is an element where some people believe that it's just not, I get it. It's not fair. It's never been fair. It will never be fair. One thing is certain though, the amount of money that you make directly is associated with the value that you provide society. So like I said, let me give you some real life examples of that. When we let the market do the market's thing and we let the market just do what it needs to do, fundamentally it's driven by the factors of supply and demand, right? So if there's more supply of something, demand goes down and the value goes down. If there's a huge amount of demand, obviously the price goes up, all right? Pretty simple. Now, traditionally, when we think of people who are, high paying earners or people who are in good jobs, as we call them, we generally think of, guys who go to university, lawyers, doctors, engineers, things like that, right? And there is a fair case to be made to say that, school is really designed to create doctors, lawyers, and engineers. But they are critical. We need them in society to function, and therefore they've got the most respect. They generally get the most money, and that's just kind of how we sort of live as a society, traditionally. Yet today, I know bricklayers here in Perth that are making more money than doctors, right? I've got a couple of mates who are bricklayers. They are making over $5,000 per week right now in Perth building houses. Why? Supply and demand, baby. Go back to pre-COVID, right? Particularly in the years of 2016, 2017, 2018, we had an oversupply of houses. The Perth market had stagnated. A lot of let's just say the trends from the mining boom, a lot of guys sort of moved on back to the East Coast, and there wasn't as much of a demand for workers here in Perth. Now, the reality is when the market started to stagnate, there wasn't really a whole lot of incentive to become a brickie other than the fact it's, an apprenticeship you can get at 16 and get into the workforce. Now, when we don't incentivize brickies getting into the workforce, and then COVID happens, then we have a huge demand in construction. There's a huge demand of people trying to build houses right now because we need more houses. There's literally nowhere near enough brickies in this country to make it work. Brickies' prices practically doubled within a couple of weeks during COVID. What was $1.50 per brick to be laid is now $3 a brick, and brickies are basically laughing all the way to the bank because guess what? There's not enough of them, supply and demand. And so this is a really good example of, even though we would consider brickies as not as a prestigious job as say what a doctor is, there's a lot less of an entry than say a doctor. The point is, right now, our society actually needs them more, and therefore that's why they're getting paid and making more money than what doctors are getting paid. All right, so that's just a really easy example of your income is directly related to the value that you provide society. Now, let's get a bit more extreme with this. So here's another example of Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Most people know Amazon, right, as that big kind of, they took over sort of like the whole eBay, like online kind of shopping situation. Now, when Jeff Bezos was building Amazon in his garage, trying to build this kind of online store where people can sort of buy, and this whole drop shipping sort of world kind of came into the mix. Like what he was trying to build was something that could literally be in everybody's hand, right? The way to think about it, if you think of an idea and execute on an idea that can literally be in every single person's house and will be in every single person's house, you're going to make a lot more money than everyone else. Like so much more, it's not even funny. And the fact of the matter is, Jeff Bezos had an idea. He executed on that idea, and it took him a couple of decades, but he nailed it. And because he built something that was able to impact society on such a huge level by being in every single person's hand via an app, that is why he made billions of dollars. So once again, this is another really good example of the amount of money that you make is directly correlated, associated with the value that you provide society. Now, to give you one final example of this, last year, I made a couple $1 million, right? So between the income on the companies that own the assets, the property portfolio across the entire board, my net worth increased by more than $2 million last year. Now, some might look at that and think, oh, that's pretty unfair. The amount of hours that I work, and they might feel some kind of way about it, and that's fantastic. But the only reason why I made that much money is because I made my clients around $25 million last year. So if I've created a service for our clients where they can essentially come here as a vehicle and build wealth, and we can literally generate our clients in like 1 year, like $25 million across all of our clients in 1 year, that means that I'm actually improving our clients' net worth. In other words, I'm improving society by around $25 million in terms of net worth for our clients. So that means that by default, I'm probably going to make a lot more money than the average person because of the size of the difference that I'm making to society. So once again, guys, the value, the income that you earn, the amount of money that you make is directly associated with the value that you provide society. So in other words, here's a tip if you want to make some more money. Focus on providing better value to society. If you want to make more money, think about how you can improve society. How can you increase your value to society? If we work with, say, 50 clients versus 500 clients versus 5,000 clients, and if in a few years' time I can make my clients $100 million in a year, I'm going to make substantially more than what I made last year. Substantially more. Because I'm focused on the value, I'm not focused on my back pocket. If I focus on the value and can provide that value, the money comes. It will always come. And that is philosophy number 2, all right, which still stands the test of time for today. Number 3, society is designed to keep you from achieving what you want. Now, when we think about, a lot of these social conflicts we've got around the world, right? And when I say social, I'm talking about like the left versus right politics, or, the woke versus the non-woke, or, you name it, right? Then you think geopolitically, we've got countries that are also at war, right? We've got countries that are also conflicting. There is a lot of narrative out there, and unfortunately it is done by the mainstream media, or the media in general, where it has this illusion that you've got the left versus right, or this party versus that party, or this group versus that group. And while there is an element of tribalism in our biology, that, our nervous system is like we are fundamentally tribal, that's just how we've evolved. I don't see the world that way. I don't see the world as left versus right, or woke versus non-woke. The way that I personally see it is people in power versus us as the people. That's the way that it's always been. That's the way that it will always be. And the powers that be are always going to convince us that it's left versus right, or half versus half, to keep us infighting and keep them in control. Now, I know that sounds a little bit potentially conspiratorial, right? But the reality is, this is just how power works, right? This is fundamentally the law of power. Now, when you think about the powers that be are powers that be for a reason. Like, the government's there for a reason. All right. And just notice how year on year, the government is continuously increasing its size and increasing its control, and taking less power from us, or more power from us, rather. I mean, Albanese at the moment is talking about how we can remove more guns from society and start reducing free speech, right? And removing, speech, free speech control. So even just from the Bondi, terrorist attack, the government's response to that is, how can we take more decision-making up to the chain of power and take more power away from the people so this doesn't happen again? Like, just the fundamental default way of being for the powers that be is to stay in power and take more power. Now, when we think about institutions, right, the amount of power that institutions have from the government, right? Again, they're there for a reason, and they're in power for a reason. The point is, none of them want you to succeed. Like, none of them want you to actually physically break out of the system where you're financially handcuffed to your job and you're living as an entrepreneur or a multimillionaire. Like, society doesn't want that. The government doesn't want that. Like, institutions do not want that. Like, the entire setup of our environment, of our society, is to keep people trapped and keep people as the people and not breaking through the poverty line. Now, again, the sooner you guys can understand that and accept that, the sooner you realize that you can actually play a game within that. And you can win from that, versus being stuck and being a victim of that. Now, think of social media, all right? And social media is, Instagram in particular is I think the one that's really sort of broken the straw on the camel's back here, because we've got things like FOMO, which didn't really used to exist before, but fear of missing out. You've got all this online jealousy, or this envy, and fundamentally these are byproducts of watching people live a more desirable life than you on a screen. And it causes you to feel some kind of way about it, all right? Whether you don't feel good enough, you don't feel worthy, you don't feel this, you don't feel like. The point is, notice how the increase in uptake of social media has directly correlated with the decline of our overall mental health as a society. Like, and to be clear, whether it was done by design, the point is, notice that's just how the world is. Like, that's just where we're sitting. Whether we think it's by design or not, it's kind of irrelevant. The point is, our mental health is in the toilet as a society, and that's the way it's been for years. And so, again, you've got to understand that society does not want to keep you out. Like, they don't want you outside of that bubble. They want you in that bubble. Whether it's depressed, anxious, whatever emotion, the point is, if you can be completely disempowered to not do anything, the powers that be win, and they continue to win, and they will continue to win. Now, even when you do get success, and I've been there, where you start to break out of the the cycle. In fact, one of my best friends told me a couple of years ago that he kind of made the comment that I've got some cheat code to get out of the matrix, and I've blasted myself out of the matrix because I'm no longer having to work a normal job and do the normal things that normal people do. The point is, even when I started to get successful, it was all my friends and family that were trying to hold me back and trying to pull me down. And they weren't doing it maliciously. They were doing it because they love me and they want to keep me safe and stop me from being vulnerable and losing and making mistakes and, failing. They wanted me to stop failing fundamentally. But if I had listened to them, I never would have started. So from a power level, from a government level, from a societal level, institutions, even social media, your friends, your family, the entire game is rigged in a way where you are not supposed to win. The sooner you can understand that and see it for what it is, the sooner you get to make a decision if you want to keep living that way or not. But philosophy number 3, society is designed to keep you trapped. It's designed to keep you from obtaining what you want. Buckle up and get used to that. Number 4, philosophy number 4. You can still make money in only 2 ways. There are only 2 ways to get wealthy. Time or risk. For the most part, most people starting off with, they have to exchange their time for money. That's having a job, earning a salary, being self-employed, you name it, right? Most of us have to start off somewhere from zero and get ourselves to a point where we've got some capital behind us. Once we have some capital, and it doesn't need to be millions, it just even like 100 grand. Like if you've been able to either save 100 grand, which is a lot of money, right, particularly nowadays, or if you're able to buy, let's just say your first home, and your first home grows and has grown in Perth the last 12 months, over 110,000 is the median. The point is, let's say you got $100,000 in equity in your own home, right, which most people do nowadays. The point of the story is, there is an argument that you no longer need your time to become wealthy now because you've now got capital. Now that you've got capital, the second way of making money other than time is now risk. So let me give you guys some examples of how to do that. When you're able to invest, the only reason why you make money on your money is because you are assuming some form of risk. Now, the type of asset, the length, there's a number of things that actually goes into what that risk is. But fundamentally, you're either making money with time, your own time, exchanging your time for dollars and cents, or you're making money with capital via risk. Now, in order to make money capital via risk, it's called investing, and here are the options. You can make money via interest income. So let's say, for example, you've got $100,000 and you go and put that $100,000 in a term deposit, in a bond, in a high interest savings account. It's some kind of fixed interest. The point is, by you putting $100,000 into that, and if you get a 7% return, you get $107,000 back at the end of the year. You've made yourself $7 grand in interest income, but you've only made that income because you've assumed risk and you've put that $100,000 at risk. Way number 2 is dividend income. So let's say, for example, you got your home, you pull out $100,000. You put that $100,000 into the stock market. Now, year on year, some stocks, not all stocks, but there are a bunch of stocks out that you can invest in that are high dividend stocks. Those stocks will actually give you a cash-on-cash return, which is called dividend income. But once again, you're only going to receive that once you've got money and you put that money at risk. Number 3 would be capital gains income. So let's say use that 100 grand of equity and you use that to buy an investment property. You buy that investment property for $800,000. You then sell that investment property 5 years later for $1 million. You've made 200 grand. You bought it 800, you sold it for $1 million, you've made 200 grand. That $200,000 that you've just made off that original $100,000 that you borrowed, that's capital gains, right? Now, once again, the only reason why you've made that money is because you took your 100 grand, you bought an investment property, and then you've assumed the risk of the investment property owning that. So you've got to deal with tenants, you've got to deal with interest rate rises, you've got to deal with all the bullshit. That's why you make a return. That's why you get income from that's why you get returns from assuming the risk of owning that property. Now, with that capital gains, that example for the property, you can also get rental income, right? So rental income is just the rent you're going to get from owning that investment property. And again, it's only going to happen from assuming a risk of owning that investment property. Next, you've got profit income. So profit income is the income that you get from essentially selling an asset, similar to capital gains. You may not necessarily need to realize the gain, but the point is, you can essentially earn income from making profits on things. Now, one really easy way to think about this, and this is what my old man's just started playing around with. Since my dad's retired, and I helped him retire with his investment portfolio, one of the things that he loves doing is watching online auctions. He used to be one of those old blokes that used to read the Quokka religiously every Thursday, and I grew up reading the Quokka and looking at all the cool stuff in the Quokka. That was before, obviously, Gumtree came around. But nowadays, he loves looking at online auctions. Now, there has been a bunch of things that he's bought over the last 12 months from these auctions. And one example is like a little old, it's almost like a little Matchbox car, like one of those little Hot Wheels ones, but these like vintage. And he bought these for like a couple of dollars each. When he goes on eBay and these are like a couple of $100 each, that is profit income. So if he was to, say, for example, start a little side hustle just doing this, he's essentially built a side hustle off profit income. He's buying these little Hot Wheels cars, these vintage Hot Wheels cars for $10, then selling on eBay for $100. That $90 profit, that's profit income, right? So again, most businesses, generally speaking, that sell some kind of good, they're generally just profit-based businesses. They're buying the good for cents on the dollar. They're selling it to you for a couple of dollars, and they're doing that at scale. That's profit income. Once again, you're only going to get profit income if you have capital to begin with to actually buy the assets, and then you're reselling them at a higher price. But again, you're also assuming the risk that you're going to go and buy that item, that Matchbox car, and you might not be able to sell it. You might think you're gonna buy it for $5 and you're gonna sell it for $100, or buy it for $10 and sell it for $100, but you might only be able to sell it for $8. So you're gonna lose money, and that's a risk that you're essentially assuming by deriving and chasing that profit income. The point is, you're only making the money because of the risk. All right, and then finally, the sixth way in this example of making an income is income on royalties. And a royalty is fundamentally when you own some kind of asset, right? Whether it could be a song, could be a movie, could be anything, right? But the point is, you've had to go and spend your time. And actually, let's do this. Let's say, for example, we want to talk about royalties of a song or an album, right? Which is quite a common thing, particularly when it comes to like selling stuff online, right? Let's say you're going to want to earn some kind of royalty income. And let's just say, for example, you're a musician. You play guitar. I play guitar, right? So let's just say you got a guitar. Now, firstly, I've got to then, first of all, learn how to play guitar. You've then got to spend your time, and I'm talking hours and hours and hours of learning how to play, starting to write songs, starting to build an album together. And, what you're doing is you're spending your time at the moment to go and, build and, produce some kind of album. Now, you've also got to go and hire a studio. So you've got to spend some money. You got to go and hire different band members. There's a bunch of money that you need to essentially spend. There's capital you need to spend in order to get this end product called an album. Now, then you have the exclusive rights to that album, right? You get all the paperwork done. So anytime someone plays that album, you get a little bit of money in income because you own the IP. You own essentially you own the technology per se, but you're now going to drive an income from that technology over time. The point is, you still have to have capital, and you still had to assume a shitload of risk in order to make that royalty income. You could go and spend 10 years learning how to play guitar. You could go and spend $100,000 on producing an album by hiring the studio, hiring the people, getting all the tracks done, buying tracks and sounds and things like that to get it all put together. And you might not make a single dollar. That's the risk that you're assuming is royalty income. So the point is, guys, there are only two ways to make money in this world. There's two ways to get wealthy, two only. You're either using your time to make the money, or you've already got some money and then you're putting that money at risk via investing. Anything outside of that, guys, it's a distraction. It is not going to help you get to your goals. Now, philosophy number 5. This is one of my favorites. One of the things that I've reviewed with all of our clients over the last couple of years are certain behaviors that our successful clients have versus, say, our non-successful clients. Now, when we do this at scale across, hundreds of people and thousands of people over the years, you can start to see some trends and patterns. Now, one of what I find is one of the most simple patterns I see from the successful people versus the non-successful people The successful people are generally more curious. The non-successful people are generally more skeptical. Philosophy number 5. You'll always be wealthier by being curious than skeptical. People who are curious are generally always asking the question why and wanting more. They're always open to opportunities. They're always seeing things, and I see this at the moment, right? We've been getting into the property development space because obviously, the traditional buy and hold, all our clients are getting a bit more mature and they're getting to the point where we can start getting into more complex investment strategies. Now that we've been playing in the development space for a little while now, and we've got a few developments underway, like I am now seeing development sites everywhere. And it's almost like, it's almost annoying. Like I'll be driving around somewhere and just going from, home to the office. And then there's like 4 or 5 different sites that I'm seeing for sale. I'm already doing the numbers in my head. It's like, holy shit, like we can make millions on that, like X, Y, and Z. All this money is just sitting there everywhere we go. But you got to keep in mind, I'm only saying it because I've primed my brain to look for opportunities and things that can help benefit us and our clients. If I wasn't curious, I wouldn't have the ability to be open to these opportunities. If I was consistently skeptical, and that's what I told my, in the world of being defensive of your own emotions, but being skeptical, you're closing yourself off to even see the opportunities as they arise. What I find, and like I said, this is a trend across a lot of our successful clients. Our successful clients are always the most curious. They're always the ones where we present them an idea. They're like, oh, okay, tell me more about that, right? And they want to dig into it more and find out more and dig in deeper and deeper and deeper. And all of a sudden, they then start to explore it. Versus the skeptical clients are too closed off. They shut the door like, no, that's not for me. And then all of the opportunities that lead from that point are just now closed. The doors are closed. So number 5, if you guys want to be wealthier, focus on being curious and forget about being skeptical. So guys, those are the 5 philosophies that still stand the test of time and will still help you win today in 2026. Hope everyone got some value out of that. Please put down some comments, like it, share it with your friends. The more questions and comments we get, the more value we can provide you guys as listeners as well. So please keep sending some questions and comments. But that's pretty much for this week, guys. Have a great week and we'll see you next week.